History has been decorated with a colorful assortment of men and women that were so far ahead of their time and paradigm that they were called outcasts and charlatans, only to now be called mavericks and trailblazers. Men and women like Sir Francis Bacon, Helena Blavatsky, Percy Fawcett, and Manly P. Hall, just to name a few. People that now we look at with reverence, but at the time, people looked at with disdain, called them pseudoscientists and a range of other things. Imagine if the pioneers and freethinkers of our time had a place to assemble and put their wanderings, ponderings, and thoughts all in one cohesive place. Well, now we do. Introducing Pharos, a brand new publication by the Institute for Natural Philosophy. This magazine aims to provide an alternative offering for those enraptured by our history, cosmos, and our place in it all. The first issue is over 200 pages and features many articles, columns, and exposés on some of our universe's most fascinating concepts. And the magazine is as much of a treat for your eyes as it is for your mind, with every page beautifully and expertly designed to accentuate the entire experience. The digital download is available now for free at the Institute for Natural Philosophy's website, and a physical copy will be available for purchase soon. Link in the description below. Stay tuned and stay curious, my friends.
So hello and welcome to another special guest episode in the Institute for Natural Philosophy. Today we have Ciarán McMahon. No, I've said it wrong again, but it's close enough. It's one of those brilliant Irish names. Is that it?
Yeah. Ciarán McMahon. Yeah.
Ciarán McMahon. Okay, I've done before correctly at least once, but now I can't do it.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll forgive you this
That's
time.
the fun with it. That's the fun with it. Okay, it's a revenge because no one knows my name also, so no worries. So today we are going to talk about ancient mysteries, ancient technologies, energy in its various forms, and trying to give out to you, our viewers, of course, not you, Ciarán, a perspective of what you've been researching on and what you have been finding. So where would you begin? Just give a small introduction of yourself and how you come to this and where you at.
So
thank you
very much, Ricardo. You're a gentleman. So I started out, so my background is I'm a HVAC and refrigeration service engineer. So refrigeration be my background, mechanical services engineer and stuff like that. That's my professional background. But my passion project, I suppose, is my love is history. I always had a great love of history, particularly Irish history. But through the likes of watching the likes of Graham Hancock and all these other like great YouTubers, no Robert Stafford, there's ancient architects, I began looking at like really investigating my own history, and that began with say surnames like say McMahon is my surname. So in Irish, McMahon means the son of the bear. I descend from ultimately the great High King Brian Boru. And it went back and back, and if a lot of people don't realize this, but in our Irish genealogies, there's they're very specific about the generations of Noah, which is from the Bible. So generations of Noah is Noah, as in flood Noah, his three sons, and how there's Japheth, who was Europe, Ham and Chem are Africa and Asia. But in the genealogies, the Irish, or the Gaels specifically, are descended of Japheth. And then this is where all these like noble genealogies come from. So when I always had an interest in that, and then other world histories. But when I really started looking, it's like there's something here. And then it carried on to looking at all the other different cultures and different similarities and different things I found throughout the world. And obviously, just by watching stuff and visiting places, it's quite interesting, you know. So hopefully, people get to see what my love for Irish history and history in general. So hopefully, I can impart some knowledge and probably inspire some sort of revival in my own culture, and as well as inspire some sort of interest in ancient history, the likes of what you guys want to do.
Sure, absolutely. Just a small question. You talked about an ancestry and lineage. Are you familiar with the work of Michael Ciarán?
Yes. Now I've never watched it. People keep on recommending me Michael Ciarán, but I've never actually sat down and watched the stuff. But from what I'm told, it's all exactly the same thing. That
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite as I said. But my difference is that so I know the story. So when I got my DNA done. So this was the basis for the channel. So this is the first episode where I talk about Irish genetics and genealogies. So I knew from history, okay, we've got all these high kings. The modern royal family are descended from Brian Boru as well. So somewhere along the line, we are related. So noble bloodlines, So that's when I really started looking into the question of it. But when I got the DNA done, this is based around the Irish genealogies, the Irish Book of Invasions. So the Book of Invasions talks about the migrations in and out of Ireland over thousands of years. So up until I think it was the 1800s, the story is that these stories are true. So history was turned around and it was said that all these stories are now rubbish. There's no truth whatsoever and they're all fairy tales. But to go back to the likes of looking at the likes of all these great history channels or alternative history channels, I decided to ask the question. So, okay, if I get my DNA done, I says I can prove these migrations to be true. And I could also prove the connection between these the Irish myths and these Irish genealogies. So if you want, I can present now for a second. If I can't,
go ahead. You just have to press that square button with the arrow pointing up.
Yeah, I think I've got it here now, do I? So I'm just going to share the entire screen there, so it'll just be a bit easier for people, okay? So
absolutely.
when I done the genealogies, I'm just looking through some of my stuff here. So can you see my screen, folks?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
So as you can see, I'm Irish. My family are in Ireland, and this is my father's side. So this is the R1B DNA. So R1B, you can see now this is the out of Africa theory. So the theory here says that these people came up from Africa, went into Kazakhstan, and migrated east and west from that point. So on
is that point in Africa Olduvai?
Yes. So they say they come up through Africa, through Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkestan, and Kazakhstan. So there's one group moves east, and then one group moves west. So that is one example. And then the next example, so that's my father's side. So in my mother's side, this is the same sort of story. But if they come up through Africa, go through Syria, Turkey, and into Greece, Portugal, and same thing as yourself, same region. These are the same people. So they go north into the world and then into Ireland. So in Irish genealogies, when I read these stories, they says, no, these migrations did not happen. So I went and looked and this. Hold on a second here. But to discuss the bit about the, as you can see here, you've got Queen Elizabeth here. Queen Elizabeth and King Charles III are descendants of Irish High King Brian Boru. He's the King Charles coronation. We took the British Royal deep root connection to Ireland. So this is the likes of the genealogies. So what the R1B...
But they have German ancestry, right?
Yeah, they have Irish ancestry as well. So if you want...
It's previous from the German? Is that what you're saying?
It's a shared ancestry. So there's a list here. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to Google it. I can show you one of the genealogies that connects. I can show you one of the genealogies that connects here. If we can find it. Let's see.
No, take your time. No worries.
Irish State of Ireland. So there's as I was saying to you before, Ricardo, there's a whole load of genealogies and stuff. So can you see this? The Library of Ireland, the History, Genealogy and Culture.
Yeah.
So
I see it.
as you can see here, so I mentioned this in my YouTube channel and my Twitter channel, but as you can see, you've got Queen Victoria here. See Queen Vic?
Yes.
So this actually gives the list of genealogies that goes down through her. And I'll show you an interesting connection down through it. So we got James the First and First of England and the Sixth Scotland, Mary Queen of Scots. So these genealogies go all the way back. So I previously said about the descent from Adam, yeah? So you can keep on seeing, can you see the numbers there on the left-hand side?
Yes.
So there's quite a number of different names there. But if you keep going further back, we go into the Irish. So King Ucky here. So King Alpin, he's a Scottish king. Kenneth Malcolm. So these are the guys of the kings of Scotland. But the Irish, the British royal family, this is coming from their genealogies. So they claim descent through the same descent I would. So my mother is an O'Neill, so he'd be grandson of El. So Niall of the Nine Hostages is one figure in Irish mythology. But then there's numerous other kings that we all connect there. Like you've got, see Con of 100 battles here, Phelim Rackmare, Phelim the Lawgiver. These are all, and Niall Moore, see Niall Moore, known as Niall of the Nine Hostages. So this is where all these genealogies connect back to. But the further you go back, you just keep on seeing these names that are mentioned in Irish mythology. So you keep on going back. I'm just going to go to the very, very start here now. So
it's a long list.
yeah, no, it's quite an interesting list. So this is Brogan. So he's one of the people that came up with Kings of Meal. So that, and then you've got Guida Glass, Heber. So these are all names that are all mentioned in the channel. But and you see Phineas Farsad, the Phoenician. But if you come down a bit further, if you come back down a bit further, right, you've got Japhet, you got Magog, Japhet, Noah, okay, Canaan, Enos, and then you've got Seth and you've got Adam, okay? So you've got a genealogy here. So remember what I said about the connection in genealogies. So when I done my DNA, I specifically went with family tree DNA for this migration map, okay? So this is the H blood group. So H is my maternal line. R1B is my father's line. So R1B is Brian Baru. And H is Niall of the Nine. So when I got my family tree DNA done, who pops up in my ancestry, as in we share a common ancestor, maternal ancestor, was Queen Victoria herself. So as you can see, I mentioned previously Niall of the Nine Hostages, and I mentioned Brian Baru. So these guys do descend from the same kings we do. But there was other research was carried out. So I knew about the haplogroups. So as you can see, a blogger of Europedia's Genetics Forum has deduced the haplogroups of many European kings and queens from living descendants who have been tested. It has not been known mtDNA has H dominated the lines of Europe's aristocracies, while R1B is the most common male lineage. So this is Prince Philip. He exhibits the stereotypical genes, and there's other personages. But if you go to the next slide, you can actually see Queen Vic is featured here as well, isn't she? You got Charles, Prince of Wales, which is R1B. George. Victoria's there. So Queen Victoria's H there as well. So this is, I knew this. So I figured, well, if I got my testing done that gave me the haplogroup and the ancient migration data, I could essentially prove the genealogies to be true via modern genetic data to match the ancient genealogies of Ireland, you know? So that's kind of where that came from. That's where that actually began from. But it's quite a lot of information that the ancient genealogists would talk about in Ireland. Okay.
Excellent. You see, I was under the impression that when this new line of aristocracy arrived in England, that the purpose was to cut that line and to create a new one. But it seems I was wrong. It seems they couldn't escape it because they are all connected from back in the system.
See, it's all generations of Noah. So I'd look at like you see the different Europeans. Like you go back far enough, we are the European people that like this is our story. You know, I've only found one grouping of it, but there is another group from Hungary. Now I haven't delved as much into that in the Irish stuff as I have the Irish stuff, but I do intend to use that at some stage.
Sure, because now that I see it, they use that same research you just shown to prove their legitimacy to take the throne, probably, because that's the lineage that they use to prove.
Yeah.
So the fact that they came from Germany doesn't imply that they broke the line.
Yeah.
And the fact that, for instance, Prince Charles is a nephew in second degree or third degree from Prince Vlad.
Yeah,
also shows that they were all over ancient the ancient continent.
Yeah, but the thing is, we are all these people, and that's probably just what I think is somewhat being hidden from us. You know, but it's quite interesting. You know.
So, where did you went after that?
During COVID, so I was sitting at home. I was still working at the time, but there was a little bit of a period I was sitting at home, and I really, really got into research and history. So my head got really buried into books, and I started finding loads of interesting stuff. And when I looked at stuff from the ancient world, from the likes of say Robert Seffer or Graham Hancock, ancient architects, all these big channels, I was like, I've seen that before. That seems familiar. So I started kind of piecing this stuff together. And as I said, so I would have driven all over Ireland. And I love history. I love going around Ireland. It's a beautiful country and stuff. And I love traveling in general. But there was something there. I says, I need to look into this. It's quite interesting.
So I believe this is the theme of your first episode on your YouTube channel, right?
And so that's genetics and genealogies. So that's how I kind of introduced the story of why I started the channel. And then the first episode is the book of invasions, where it talks about the different migrations in and out of Ireland. So the first migration was so you have Cesar, who is said to be the daughter of Noah. She's said to come from the west. Then you have the Fomorians. The Fomorians are said to have come from the underworld. Partholon is said to have come into Ireland after the fall. Then Nemids, the Firbolg, the Tuatha, and the last migration is the Milesians, who modern Gaels, so the likes of myself, our family will connect it. But the key thing about that is, when you look at the genealogies, they all say one thing: Noah, generation of Noah, Japheth, descendant of Japheth. They're all related back and forth. So to go to the royal family thing, or these connections, sure, you go back far enough, we're all related, you know?
Sure. If you consider the more than 400 flood myths, it seems that a lot of people died. So those few that managed to escape by either knowing it, by some form of knowledge or ancient astronomy or something they could recognize, and they are the ones that decided to repopulate. So it's easy to see how everything goes to that point.
Yeah. It's interesting.
In your genealogy, I only dislike, not in yours, but on everyone's, I dislike that part that comes from Olduvai. That's why I asked. To the first 3 dots where you come out of Africa. So what's said that is came out of Africa. That is the phrase for humans. And I don't think that they are using the latest results, because we are now the oldest human is no longer African.
Yeah, it's a Neanderthal from Russia, correct?
And you have those from Asia too. So I think that part they're putting in there by standard. I don't think they do any research to give you that first 2 or 3 dots out of Africa.
Yeah,
but the other ones are quite revealing. Yes.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Now the critique I do have about the family tree DNA. Another theory that I have is it's the out of the Atlantic theory, and we've talked about that before. But that it seems more likely that the European people that actually came out from the west. So they started out from the west, migrated east, and came back. But in Irish mythology, there's a book I read in this period of COVID, and it talked about a deluge event that separated. This is actually the book that started that theory. So the deluge event was a thing called Doggerland Bank is a region around Ireland and Britain, and up until about 8 to 15,000 years ago, that place was once habitable. But there was an event known as the Starega Slide. So the Starega Slide actually sunk that event sunk that region over time. And this is where I think the restart had happened. And what happened, there was almost like a repopulation of Europe from there. And I reckon that is possibly the generations of Noah's story. But then they keep on coming back and forth. And this is where the Book of Invasion story is picked up.
Regarded to Doggerland, which is explained as being the result of a Yokoloth, I think that's the correct name. That's the breaking of an ice dam that caused the flooding of Doggerland.
Yeah.
As we were talking before we start recording, Doggerland is one of those places that is an idyllic area before it was submerged. And to this day, there are areas that are only 10 meters above, 10 meters deep. So it's very shallow areas still.
Yeah.
So, it is thought that many archaeological finds could be done there. The problem is at the water. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Did you research on the history of those family lines, like the Tuatha that you talked about?
Yeah, but see, we'd all connect back. So they all specifically say, if you want me to share the screen again, I'll talk about the.
Go ahead.
Generations here. So I can show you an example of two families. So I can use my own as an example. So there's 2 tribes. So we've got the Dalcassian. So this gives you your pedigrees. So this is the last. So the genealogical history of the Milesian families of Ireland. So Dalcassian. So Cormac Cash was one of them. And as you can see, it gives you Milesius, King of Spain, and Heber. So Heber is also mentioned in the previous genealogy mentioned about the royals. But as you can see, number 2, Heber, third son of Ur, and oldest those of who conquered the Tuatha De Danann and colonized Ireland. So this is the last invasion of Ireland. But you can see the pedigrees here, and this is where these lineages actually come from. So I mentioned son of Phelim Rekmar in the genealogy for the royal family there. So that's him there. So these guys all feature consistently. But this then comes down to us. So I'm a McMahon, but I'm a McMahon from the O'Briens. So I'm a Thomond McMahon. But then there's another family of McMahons who come from the O'Neills. So there's two sets of families, but I'd actually figured out which one I'd come from going back in Irish genetic data, from modern genetic data, and then you have the High Nile tribe. So this gives you the O'Neills, the genealogical history museum families of Ireland. So Niall Gaelic. So Niall of the Nine Hostages.
Are they contemporary, or are you talking about through time, or are those families are contemporary with one another?
Yeah, no, they're still kicking around. So my mother is an O'Neill from the north. So the names have stayed in Ireland.
Okay.
So we're like, this is why I love this story so much, is that because we've got such a it's almost like a rich history that's been forgotten in time. You know, it's like there's a couple of interesting screenshots there from like different essayists who wrote on Ireland. So this is one from the Milesian genealogies. So the one I can send you some of this stuff if you want to post it after the fact. But it's always the historical use of these genealogies is very great, not only because they give an authentic pedigree and an approximate data for chronological calculation, but from the immense amount of correlative information which they contain. Every freeborn man of the tribe was entitled by blood should have come to his turn to succeed the chieftaincy, hence the exactitude of which each pedigree was kept, hence their importance in the estimation of each individual, hence the incidental matter they contain when it mentions such historical events, and may have acted on different tribes and families by which their lost inheritance or the independence was constantly their claim, however remote to the chieftaincy. So, as you can see in the bottom paragraph, the ancient history of people should always be studied with care and candour by those who, as a matter of interest or duty, wish to understand their social state, and the government best suited to that state. Many of the poorer families are descendants of these ancient chiefs. The old habit which deepened and intensified itself during the centuries cannot be eradicated, though it may be ridiculed, and the peasant is still a boast of his blood and still has left him with the proudest heritage.
That's on purpose. That's just a sect of the agenda to reduce those people and those families and their power and their influence. But there is two things I take from that. One of them goes along with my idea that when you talk about several, let's call it tribes, I'm doing it wrong, but the O'Neills, your own, and others that were connected by blood were all users of the same type of culture, all users of the same type of spirituality, all users of the same type of, and builders of the same type of structures, and they were on top of that knowledge. So when you clean those families, from what I've seen in history records, when England starts to take land and to reduce their power and to force leaders into humiliation, so even that stone of destiny, as you told, was taken from them. I think it's all part of the plan of this winning side of the agenda so far. That
history is written by the winners.
Exactly. But I'm intrigued about one thing you talked about. It's the Fomorians, right?
The Fomorians,
sorry. So you say they come from the underground. Can you explain further on that?
Well, so from what I was looking at into this, so the Fomorians, when it comes into the Book of Invasions, they fight with Parthenon when he lands into Ireland. So they go to war each other and they're subdued and stuff like that, but they come back later and fight. Now, at some instance, the Fomorians are regarded as a supernatural force, but if you think about, there's a lot of stories about giants and stuff like that. If you look at the similarities between the Fomorians and say the Greeks, like the Titans and stuff, seems to be quite a similarity in names and then what their godly beings are and stuff like that. There's quite an interesting story behind the gods of these different people. Like you can relate them. So in relation to, say, the Fomorians, I relate the Fomorians to the Titans. The two of they man are definitely like they could be the Egyptians, because the Egyptian connection in Ireland, they could be the likes of Thoth, etc. There's quite a lot, because the migrations are gone back and forth. Like the Pharaoh, I believe to be the Sumerians. Pharaoh means men of the bag, and if you think of the people who had the
men of the bag,
it's quite like, and there's other stuff in Ireland that like, you see different connections, like Göbekli Tepe. Graham Hancock exposed that really got me into it. So I started looking in around Ireland, and I found there's T-shaped pillars in Ireland as well. So why is there T-shaped pillars in Ireland, and why is there T-shaped pillars in Turkey? Then when I investigate more, there's T-shaped pillars in Spain also, and in the same region of this megalithic region. It's an oddity. Is like, why do they have T-shaped pillars? Like there's no, but in Irish, and it's a known fact that Turkish farmers landed in Ireland 6,000 years ago. So that fact is where I made the connection. Okay, the Fair Bogue, as in the men of the bag, were one of the migrations into Ireland. And I reckon they are the guys who were involved in the mound building, as well as had something to do with those T-shaped. There's numerous T-shaped crosses in Ireland, and it's called a Tau. It's a Tau cross into Celts, so it's T-A-U. But if you think Tau is also a Greek letter, so it's a symbol of Tau. Yeah,
I
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
I now I remember seeing those from years of me looking at stuff. They call it hammers. The historians call those T-pillars that you are describing, that I've seen several of Irish origin, they call it giant hammers because they don't have the top of the cross. So to be a cross, it has to a small tip on the middle.
Yes.
But it doesn't have. So it's just
straight T-shaped pillar.
Exactly, and they from what I've read, they call it the giant hammers, like an homage to Thor. So it's complete deviance of what you're saying. Okay, interesting. Yes, and how do you connect mythology around these leaders that had magical items, that had special powers? How do you connect that to factual history? Is there any possible way?
So there's one particular relic, and you mentioned that yourself. It was the Stone of Scone, or the Stone of Destiny. So for viewers at home, so I'm just going to share the screen again just to show what I'm describing here.
Absolutely.
Let me see for a second. Sorry, guys. So we'll discuss relics here for a second. So can people see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So I go back to the genealogy. So if you want to look to the bottom of the screen here, we have Queen Elizabeth, George V, Edward, and Victoria. So as I already described in the genealogies, there's a genetic connection with myself and Queen Vic herself. And then as you go through, if you go further back through these genealogies, you'll see different names, and you'll see Cormac Cash, you'll see James V, James VI, you'd see Eric, you'd see King Uki, you'd see Nine Newell, so that's Niall the Nine.
Is that a public?
Yes, this is a public document, yeah. And there's different myths. So there's a myth. I actually talk about this in the channel as well, where there's a myth where Tia Tephi or Tia Tamar, she comes up from Egypt and she brings the Stone of Destiny with her to Ireland. Okay, so she escapes Israel with the Stone of Destiny along with Zedekiah. She landed in Ireland and married King Yuki, and this is where you get this royal lineage. But the interesting thing about this story is it's the actual Stone of Scone. So the Stone of Scone is the royal coronation chair. So the Stone of Scone was probably rolled out during the royal coronation of King Charles, and you can see that here. But in Irish myth, and I'm just gonna Google that now.
While you do, isn't it? It's funny to me that we hear a lot about the Spear of Destiny, but not a lot about the Stone of Destiny. If it wasn't for the coronation, 99% of people would never heard of it.
Oh no! But see, this is where the thing of the Stone of Destiny comes from. So, the autobiographer Tia Tephi. So Tia Tephi is said to be buried up in Tara, and Tara is the royal seat in Ireland, in County Meath. Royal Meath is what it's specifically known as, and it's a place that if you go to Ireland, Ricardo, you should most definitely check out. But there's quite a lot of so if you see this paragraph here, the Book of Tephi describes in detail the journey of Jeremiah took with Tia Tephi, the Leafall, the Stone of Destiny, and the Ark of the Covenant, from which Jerusalem to Ireland via Tanis in Egypt, Raiders of the Lost Ark. when she's proclaimed queen of the Gadite Israelites who live and broken in Spain. He also pops in the genealogy, so I mentioned his name there as well. And they say they landed in Hoth. So the actual story of the modern Stone of Scone is it came from Scotland, but the story with the Stone of Destiny in Scotland, it got taken from Ireland, and as you can see, it came from Egypt. Now, if you go back to what I described in why I got my DNA done, I knew these myths. So if there was no truth to these mythologies, quite interesting that we have a story here that comes all the way up from Egypt into Ireland and Britain, you know. But that's just one of the relics, and we've got other similarities there. Where I talk about the two-a-day Danann. So the weapons of the two-a-day Danann.
Yeah, you said that was one still missing.
Yeah. So
the sword.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to have a look at this is pretty cool in relation to Game of Thrones. So the two-a-day Danann are one of the second last group who took Ireland, okay? But they also mention of what they took with them. So these people, so as you can see, little history lesson on the two-a-day Danann there. They talk about that they landed with 4 jewels from the 4 cities and appears to them, and they contends that the two-a-day Danann crossed their seas in their fleet rather than the mist. And they were brought knowledge, arts, prophecy, skill, magic, and each one is said to have its own poet. So this all stems back from this all stems to the Druids. But as you can see, you've got the stone of fall or the stone of destiny. So there's 2 stones of destiny. You got the spear of Lu. You got the sword of Nuada. So Nuada is the chief god of the two-a-day Danann, and you've got the Dagda's cauldron. But the story of the Ark of the Covenant, they've got 2 stone tablets. You've got the staff of Aaron, and then you've got the rod of Aaron, and then you've got a pot of manna. Now, the only thing that's missing from that mythology there is with the Ark of the Covenant and the gifts of the two-a-day Danann is the sword. So what is cool about the sword is the...
Any ideas?
Well, I reckon it's something to do with the Excalibur story. So
sure, that's what a connection I was making. But there is any ideas on your research what might happen to it?
If you look at the royal family also have the Stone of Destiny, right? But the royal family have royal swords. So when all these the relics were brought out, when these relics were brought out for the coronation, you can actually see, so there's the sword of mercy, the swords of spiritual justice and temporal justice. So these at the same time were rolled out.
Those are certified as ancient swords?
They say they're not, but it's interesting. So these are the relics. These are the relics of the royal family that I'm describing. So you've got Everett's crown, the orb, the scepter with the dove, sword of offering, the sovereign scepter with cross, coronation, and the sword of state. So I reckon one of these swords could be this ancient sword, but that is only kind of a theory at the moment. But you've got these ancient swords, and you've got the Stone of Destiny. It's quite interesting.
But a lot of adding, because I don't believe the people you're talking about, the time of the tribes, would put those stones embedded into the scabbard and to the sword itself.
Yeah, but they would have carried it down. So this is probably been in the family. Like if you want see Brian Boru, there's an image of Brian Boru, who is the High King, which the modern royal family would descend from. So as you can see him, he's got his sword, crown, his harp, and his shield. So this is Brian Boru himself. So he also he had this sword, but what happened to it, nobody knows. So it could have been taken with the likes of the stone. It's quite the possibilities are there. But in regards to the swords, in regards to the actual sword, it is said that it stayed with. So on Clive Suddas was the sword of Nuada and was one of the 4 treasures. So it's quite possible that it stayed within this. But Brian Boru was also a Dalcassian, and it could have been taken from him. Could have been, but that's just ideas now at this stage.
Sure. Because it has a very European look, very clean look.
Yeah.
Very 16th century look or something like that. Because as you can see, I'm a fencer, so
yeah.
I do a little bit about swords. Yeah. Well, the point is, do you, for instance, do you think that the stone was supposed to be on a wooden bench, or they use it differently in inside doors ritual,
it would all be,
or it's just symbolical?
It would be ceremonial. So when the myth around the stone of destiny is that when the true king steps his foot on it, the stone will scream, and then this is when you know it's the true high king. That's the myth. That's the myth associated with it. But that's this. But I think a lot of that would have been lost with the likes of the Druids, because the Druids would have kept this tradition on. But up until the Irish system. So the Irish system had what was known as the Breton law system, and this is where they kept the original traditions. But when the first kind of invaders of Ireland in the modern period, they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. The likes of the Fitzgeralds, they really amalgamated into the Irish culture. So what happened was they decided to implement the feudal system, and then this is where the real destruction of Gaelic heritage and story was taken over then in more recent times, and it was deliberate,
Sure. This is how I interpret that. When you talk about the stone would sing or make a noise.
Yeah, harmonics.
In my research, if you put a stone that can resonate with a specific place, and you place a person that resonates specifically in that required frequency, you establish a connection between the above and the below, and the stone, because there is a side of obscure geology that it's called the songs of stone. That is when stone itself creates a noise. So in very specific conditions, of course. So it's not far-fetched to me to think that a person that they think it's earns that place because it resonates with his body, resonates with certain frequency, that when it sits on the stone, that it's placed on a specific place, not a wooden chair, I'm sure, it would produce a sound because the energy would couple. So by coupling, it can create what is called a standing wave. A standing wave, it's a current that can produce that effect on stone, among several others. So I think there's some truth to that idea that the stone would sing. Sorry for this, but
no, 100%. But if you look at the likes of what the Tuatha De Danann did, they imparted knowledge and poetry and stuff. There was I've had this with people before, and where they said, "Oh, it's only Ireland," and it's like there was a lot more to Ireland than just mounds and bog and pints of Guinness and leprechauns. There was a really ancient history, and the same thing with Britain, the same thing with Europe. We've a really brilliant, amazing history, and again, it should be explored and respected and shown to people.
Have you ever encountered in your research the name Merovingians? Because you're talking about relations to the divine families, let's call it like that. So Noah would lead to Jesus would lead to Mary would lead to the daughters of Mary would lead to the Merovingians would lead to the taking of the knowledge from the area of Egypt all across Europe, leaving several groups, and finally ending on the north of the British Islands. So have you found it somewhere?
There's a lot of that in Ireland as well, but it's the names, it's the change of the names. Like Mary could be related to the likes of Bridget, but there's some interesting documentaries. So another great documentary was Ben McBrady, The Last Druid. So he talks about this same thing what you're discussing there, and there's a place in Ireland that I can't recall where it is, but it's on the place to visit, and it's actually called the Jew's house. So they do say that when Jesus was said to have got here himself, and he was said to have been in Ireland and learned, because Ireland has a lot of old Christian settlements, and they were known as schools of learning. I shared with you Clon McNoyes before. So Clon McNoyes has the Sonic Arch. So that was one school. So a lot of masons and carpenters would have came out from there, and they're from the 12 Apostles of Ireland. So they would do their learning there and then go
another echo.
Yeah. But there is known schools within Ireland. It's Phineas Farsad schools essentially. Yeah, but it was more in a more Christianized story, if you know what I mean. So I reckon Ireland's story has been it has been altered. So one, by the Brits, but two, when St. Patrick went to Ireland, what did he do? He killed the serpent. But St. Patrick, Ireland doesn't have snakes. It doesn't have the climate for it. It doesn't have reptiles. But what does the serpent represent? The serpent represented the old faith, the old Druidic faith.
Exactly.
So what St. Patrick did, and
was to finish the serpent worship.
Yeah, he destroyed the old worship, and he destroyed, like people say, these Druids who were really, really learned people, they didn't write anything down until 1600 years ago. And these are some of the points I looked at and was like, this doesn't make sense. How could these learned people who were able to build structures like Newgrange, they are able to look at the stars, they were able to come up with all sorts of mythological sequences, they have these genealogies, they have this, they have that, and such knowledge, but they didn't write anything down until...
There's a reason for that.
Exactly.
That's exactly the one I've talked to you about before we start recording.
Yeah.
They didn't need it to be written because the information could be stored on the sites itself.
Mm-hmm. True. At the same time, history is written by the winners. This is why my point is that the establishment have made these people out to be nothing more than, I suppose, barbarians. Sure. That's all they could do. They walked around the bogs and that was it. But they were a sophisticated class of people that had knowledge.
I would say that the fact that you said they only start writing 1600 years ago, right? That's what you said. Coincides with the period where they were starting losing access to their long ancestry of sites.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book that I'm about to launch next month, I explain how they used the sites to keep the memories or the information, because as is being done in labs right now, crystal is an excellent data storage mechanism, and it can be done in layers. That means it's almost unlimited, because there's so many different states that when you introduce different frequencies to the same crystal, it rearranges itself to that frequency, which means it access new layers of information. So if during rituals, they could be actually imprinting their memories, their knowledge into the site, as well as recover it from the site using those same rituals involving sound and all the characteristics of these sites to get that knowledge. So there's no need to write anything, because it's something that was never interrupted. It was never needed. It's like, I don't know how old you are, but I'm before cell phone. And people of my generation say they never felt they needed a cell phone until they had one. Yeah, we never felt the need. We never felt the need. I never thought, oh, it wouldn't be wonderful if I could call that guy instead of having to go home to pick the landline, or go to a phone booth and have to call him. I never thought about that. It was as it was. So I think that's the same process, although I'm simplifying, of course, but it's the same process. They didn't need to write things down. They have a much better way. Instead of you reading a book, I could create a ritual, put you in there, and you will receive exactly what you are looking for. The same way that, for instance, I don't know if you know this, but in the Hypogeum of Malta, during Greek times, people were paying to sleep on the second level because the answers they had was answer them while they sleep in there. So they paid to sleep inside the Hypogeum, supposedly a place of the dead, where the bodies were left to rotten on the top floor. So imagine if was so, the smell would be unbearable, let alone sleep, right? But let's put that aside. The fact is, because of the characteristics and the frequencies that were introduced to the Hyphaliani Hypogeum, that's the correct name, people would get information. So if they want to solve a problem, if they had a doubt, if they have an emotional issue, whatever, they paid, they slept there, and they get their answers because the site would give them the answers, because somehow it was already embedded some sort of answer to that question. That's the best way to describe it. So all this to say that they didn't need to write it down. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, but it's the connection there. No, it's like it's almost like the Akashic records.
Exactly, it is. It is the same connection. It's just a different neural network.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a crystalline network instead of being our own. It is biological. So, but it's the same process, as above, so below, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So we still have about 15-20 minutes. Would you like to expose any other areas of your research?
I did mention a bit of the out of the Atlantic theory. So Ricardo probably shared some of the stuff, but I've been looking at different things in regards to one connection around. I want to look at people. I want people to look into Irish history with a kind of like a different mindset now. And then the next was so I've described the out of the Atlantic theory, somewhat of a link into Saltern hypothesis, where come up with a different kind of migration path across the Atlantic. So we mentioned Doggerland Bank. At some stage about 8,000 years ago, the sea levels are much lower. So we should really be looking at places, if we want to find the truth about Irish, like any history, you should start looking below the water. And my last video was a pyramid theory. So myself and Ricardo have had some interesting discussions on this now, but my pyramid theory came about a few years ago. So as I said to you, my background is I'm a fridge engineer. So I started looking into electrical theory in college when probably about 10 years ago when I came up with this. So when you hear people talk about pyramid theories, now there's a lot of great pyramid theories. Danny tested pyramids. There was the likes of Chris Dunn. There's the likes of ancient architects and stuff. I've learned a lot from different people from discussing the pyramid. And obviously you're doing your work on harmonics and the likes of the Osiris shaft. But when I looked at these theories, I particularly started looking in the pyramids. There was mad interest in Tesla. I would have read a lot on him and stuff. But the pyramid is, when I was looking at this, it's like, okay, for the pyramid to work as a generator or anything electrical, the question I asked myself, so this is from my own actual experience, do you have copper there? Do you have a conductor? Okay, so I went and looked, and what a lot of people have missed, I believe, in regards to the pyramid theory, any pyramid theory, there's two sets of copper prongs within the pyramid. So there's a set of copper prong in the north hidden chamber, and there's one in the south chamber, and they run down into the Queen's Gallery. So when I looked at this, I says, okay, so you've got copper, okay, and it's a joint acoustic chamber. Are we missing something? It says we have to be missing something. If this is anything like other than the tomb, it would need a material like bronze. So I did eventually find that was actually quite interesting. So the Queen's chamber it looks to be missing. The key piece in my pyramid theory is it appears to be this bronze pine cone. So the bronze pine cone represents the pine cone represents the pineal gland in the human brain. And I've read some interesting books. There's a fella, Conor McDarry, Irish Wisdom in the Pyramids. In the last page of the book, he says the pyramid was designed as a representation of the human brain. So I only read that book when I went to Egypt in May. So I kind of had this theory kicking around for years, and I didn't really want to release it because it was kind of that bit far out, but on the more metaphysical side with the bronze pine cone. But when I read that, I says, I'm going to have to publish this so people can kind of see it. But from the actual theory itself, I reckon it just needs to be tested, because when you think, like, I would have learned about electrical theory. So what electricity essentially is just a conductor and a magnetic field. So you want to generate, you want to move, or you want to generate electrons or generate power. All you need to do is a couple of magnets and a stator and a rotor spinning. That's you generating electricity. Not a lot, but you're still generating some form. But what a lot of people don't realize is that, like, Earth's a giant magnet. So when I looked at the pyramid theory, I knew Earth was a giant magnet. So in the research for that, I looked at it and then it said, so we have a thing called atmospheric electricity. So Earth has a giant magnetic field, and it has an electric charge within the atmosphere. So when I looked at my pyramid theory, I said, okay, so if we got atmospheric electricity, we have a copper conductor, we have a missing bronze mechanism, and we've a magnetic field. So to really just, can I share the screen for a second just to show a better image?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of have a habit of doing that, but I'll show you the image and trying to describe, just so it'll be easier for people to see when I'm describing. So essentially, Earth's magnetic field, just to reference the paper, so just to show the copper conductors, allegedly there's a missing gold capstone, and in this chamber here, you've got a copper conductor, which is this fella. So these are the two copper prongs. So that's 2 points there.
You say copper. Couldn't it be exactly as the tip tops that the Egyptians used? They called it electrum. That's the Greek name.
Yeah,
and that name, it's an alloy between silver and gold. Yeah, supposedly.
Well, see, I just be going from so Ganta Brinks is the fella who actually done the study. So he said they were copper prongs, but what's happened to some of that information, we're a little bit uncertain. But to kind of describe the magnetic field, so Earth, this is essentially a description of Earth's magnetic field. We have an electrosphere, so electricity would naturally just want to go to Earth. It's like, why, if I'm ever working on something, the first thing I think is it grounded? Do I test the ground? If I'm ever doing a diagnosing on a motor or compressor, first thing you do, has the motor grounded, has the copper windings grounded. So, but the describe of atmospheric electricity, so Earth has a charge. So essentially what I figured the pyramid was doing is it's allowing the charge a safe path from Earth's atmosphere to go to Earth. And again, it kind of goes back to this as above, so below. But there's a couple of things. I have the paper there, it's online, and it's mentioned in the YouTube video. But that's if anybody wants to see, that's this would be.
To be honest, I have to say that the only problem I have with many good explanations on how the pyramid could produce electricity or energy is what that energy or electricity would be used for, because I don't think they have any need to electricity as we have today. Right, that's my only.
Well, if you look at some of the, say, ancient Celtic artifacts, you'll see these guys with like mad gold balls. You'll see these like with like gold rings. But if you think about it, they're conductors. And you've seen these like mad hats and stuff like that. These are all like, gold is a conductor as well, but like obviously copper is better. But copper is probably the best, or gold is probably the best. Sorry, excuse me. But they've different properties. for that effect. But I think it's gold isn't magnetic, but copper is. So that's why you need copper for the actual magnetic field. So when you want to, like what I was describing with the Earth, is that Earth's a giant magnet. For you to essentially induce current to generate power, it's just another copper coil in the magnetic field. So if Earth has a natural magnetic field and natural electricity, all we have to do is tap into that.
Sure. I have schematics to build power source that is used in some places in the desert of Arizona and remote places.
If the deserts are clear, excuse me.
There is just a copper tube, some isolation, and I can't remember the other material. I'm not sure if it's iron or what it is inside it. And when you place that on the ground with just a little bit of the tip out, each one of those will generate 1 volt.
Yep.
So if you produce 220 of this, you have a continuous and uninterrupted 220 volt or whatever is that your country use, if 140 or 220.
Yep.
So they have it's CC that it's called. No, how it's called? Alternated current, and the other one is direct current.
AC, DC, direct current.
So they have the number of cylinders they have on the ground is the amount of they have of DC current. So that then can be changed to AC current and then power the house.
Yeah, via rectifiers and stuff like that.
So people must realize what you're saying, that it's energy is everywhere around us. We are not in an innocuous planet or innocuous atmosphere. In fact, I've seen it on your photograph, up to 400 volts per meter, right?
Yeah, it's 400,000 volts in the atmosphere, and per meter it is, I think it's 100 volts per meter, 30 volts per foot. So that's your potential difference.
And how about the amperage? Is there any?
I wouldn't be able to measure that current.
Yeah, I see.
I couldn't.
That's our problem. That's where I wanted you to answer. We don't know how to use it.
Not yet, but hopefully by us talking and having conversations like this, it inspires somebody else that can kind of see it. But it's like as it says, I would have followed. You're probably a follower of Tesla yourself, and I was taught, and from Tesla, how to find the secrets of the universe. You think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. But a great engineer, I served my time under, Master P. This fella was a godlike genius, and he taught me this. He says, Ciarán, he's a fella from the Caribbean, and he goes, Ciarán, he goes, you have to think of everything as energy. It doesn't go anywhere. It just changes its state. Yeah. So in our game, we think about moving solids to liquids to gases with the refrigerating effect and stuff like that. And obviously, we deal a lot with like electricity and stuff. So he embedded a lot of this stuff into me and it helped me understand just different things. But it's that knowledge that I'm now trying to impart to discuss with other people and probably come up with something amazing, free energy, hopefully something.
When you state that, it gives a very good perspective to alchemy, because alchemy is exactly that. It's the transfiguration of the elements, the base, which is just it's like that definition that I don't know if the alchemists had, that the universe, let's call it holographic. And the thing that I find interesting with any hologram is that the smallest part of the hologram has the code for the whole hologram. So if you deep dive fractally into one hologram, you'll find the whole image inside it, and then again and again and again. So when you use one element or you mix the elements, you can create anything, and what you have created can then be changed into anything, as long as you know the secrets of how to manipulate those same elements. Right? So and that was lost, unfortunately. It's not lost, but it's very well hidden, let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's up to seekers to find the answers. Exactly. But it's interesting to say that the alchemy thing. So think of electricity. Electricity is a chemical reaction. So we were talking about you'll be a big follower of the electric universe theory. So all chemical, alchemy, everything's electric, everything is energy. You know, it's when you start thinking in terms like that, it's like, oh yeah, and it's good to talk to fellow people like yourself that get it, you know.
Sure. Look, I don't know if you know this ancient literary work, but it's called The Singing Pyramids.
Never heard of it.
Okay, and tells of a story of a traveler that when he reached about 40, 50 kilometers away from the pyramids, he couldn't see them, but he could already hear them.
Mm.
So, like a thump that creates a melody because it enlaces itself with the distance and with the sounds, and it creates some sort of a melody. And associating research like your own, introducing acoustics into those researchers like your own, we find that if we use, because I'm not sure if you included, I think you did, included the portcullis on your research.
The portcullis was for thermal expansion. So I reckon that instead of being like a, do you mean the King's Chamber portcullis?
The portcullis is a set of slabs.
Yeah,
Four
that's in the
slabs, if I remember.
In the King's Chamber, yeah.
So
but I reckon
by regulating the position, you regulate how much air enters.
Yeah.
By regulating the air, you regulate the frequency, because you have the underground structure with water working, for instance, using Christopher Dunn as a pump, that so many models were created successfully that they work as a pump. The problem is they're thinking of irrigation. There was no need for irrigation because that area was lush. Okay, so, but the theory is still good, because that water, what it creates, it's the thump. It creates the pressure of the water regulated by the air that enters or exits by the portcullis, creates its different thumps. The thumps are amplified by the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber uses all those structures above it to channel it, to condensate it, to create those standing wave, that bubble of influence that I was talking to you about, that creates this area that can be used for deep thought, for consciousness expansion, or as we've seen on the Sea People invasions. I'm not sure if you are aware.
Yeah. It's not the Sea Peoples.
They never could enter. They couldn't enter Egypt.
Yeah.
And then, this is what I think, they finally managed to sabotage the system by blocking the channel that led water to the pyramid. And when they cut that by sending 1 or 2 men alone to create that dam, the sound stopped. And when the sound stopped, they finally could enter river down, and that's how they managed those 6 hours or 12 hours as described in ancient texts that they fought with the Sea People until the system is put to work again, and the thump begins again, and then they couldn't stand being there, and they are forced to retreat, and many of them were killed, as the texts say. They were killed without any, how should I say it, reaction. It's like they were in the ground, and they just go there. And why? Because they're using special equipment, as you were saying, those rings, certain crystals that can balance that effect. And by taking, for instance, one frequency away of the trident, you get a completely different effect. So they could be unaffected by that bubble of influence, while the others are. So I think that combining all these ideas into a giant model, we'll find many applications for the same structure. That without people like yourself doing their research, we wouldn't put that another piece of the puzzle into it. So I thank you for it.
No, 100%. It's, but this is what I'm a strong believer in. Like, this is what we're here for. We should be able to openly talk about ideas and try and formulate something new. Like, I had a bit of resistance in regards to a couple of Egyptologists and archaeologists saying, no, these are tombs, this is not possible. And I was like, but hold on a second. It's like, look at this. Like, I seen the pyramid, so he was in Egypt in May, and I was like, these things are spaceships. It's like, they're not tombs. So these things are insane. I've never seen anything, and I've seen some cool buildings in my time, and I've worked on some cool equipment in my time. Seeing that, and I was like, wow. But in regards to like some of the stuff, like see what you're describing in with the pump. So it's heat, it's expansion. So I deal with a lot of, say, thermal expansion. So you think where the pyramid is, it's heat. So a lot of what I do with my job is like measuring resistors and temperature sensors and stuff and checking them. and everything is done by heat. So this goes into Ohm's law. So you got your voltage amps, resistance, and you got your temperature. So I reckon as the pyramid heat during the day, the pressure increases, the water begins to evaporate, and then the copper bronze oscillating mechanism begins to ring, and that's what your mechanism is. That's when your pyramid begins to sing,
creating the wave.
Yeah, but you think acoustic pressure, so sound waves. So you've got heat equals pressure. You've got these sound waves. That's pressure. So you got this oscillating mechanism, but the pyramid also has air shafts. So my theory is that they expand. So that King's chamber expands because they get hot, and there is air pressure relief valves. But as it cools during the night, it resets itself. It's like a device. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's just, it says, like, I've put my 2 cents to it, and hopefully someone else is seeing is like, hold on a second, there's something there. But unfortunately, it's the like of us that have to have these discussions outside of the peer-reviewed experts who say, no, they're just a tune. There's nothing else to do with this. Story closed. You know?
Yeah. And the most important is that we can talk without, even if we think we're right, without that mindset that is absolutist. So I have the final answer. This is exactly what it was. Yeah. So there's no conversation. In fact, I think that one of the most efficient ways of learning is listen to people we disagree with. Yeah. Because if we talk with people that we agree with, we won't go that far.
It's an echo chamber.
Okay, so we need to see all these different perspectives in an open way, in a way of agreement, of understanding, of empathy, and not discarding any of these thoughts while they are reasonable, of course. And yours have been supported by several papers that you show on your videos that I have published myself, showing that the pyramids have lots of functions, including the one that you're talking about. So I thank you very much for coming to the Institute for this podcast. It was a wonderful conversation. I hope you can do it again.
100%. But thanks very much,
Ricardo. Because I think there's a lot of your 7 so far series, that 7 episodes that we didn't touch on. We jumped from the beginning to the end, but I hope you can do it again. So don't go away. Thank you all for watching, and please like, subscribe if you like it, and be prepared for the 15th of December. Thank you very much. A very fond farewell to you all.